Hello, everybody. My name is Adlan Fella. Welcome to today's webinar, Unlocking Wi-Fi Potential with OpenRoaming. It's my pleasure to welcome two distinguished speakers today. I will be talking about the potential for OpenRoaming for the industry. Here. So this webinar is the first of a series of webinars dedicated to the wireless convergence where Wi-Fi and other technologies meet. In particular, Wi-Fi and cellular tend to ignore each other, when in fact they really complement and combine each other. And there are a lot of lessons that can be learned from each of the camp. The Convergence webinar series are monthly in-depth thought leadership webinars about Wi-Fi trends in the context of convergence. That includes IoT, 5G, cloud transformation, enterprise digitalization. And it's really a bridge between the two communities to talk to each other in the context of the evolution of telco and IT industries. We have identified a series of topics of interest. The list is pretty long. Those highlighted in blue are the ones that we feel have a lot of, are very timely, especially the 6 gigahertz update in the context of the upcoming WRC conference. We also increasingly feel the need to discuss the role of Wi-Fi in light of the emergence of private 5G and what role each technology will have. And we're looking for sponsors, obviously, to make those webinars viable. And you can also select your own topic. So although these topics evolve around Wi-Fi, we're interested in looking at different technologies, whether it's fiber or how BSS is used in the context of cloud native services, etc. So today we have two distinguished speakers. So there has been a last minute change here. We have Bart Brinkman replacing Matt McPherson, who couldn't make it the last minute. But we're really happy to have Bart because I didn't even know it. He's the inventor of OpenRoaming. So who better to speak about how this standard platform works? And of course, we have Thiago Rodriguez, who will be speaking on behalf of the Wireless Broadband Alliance. So we're very happy to have you both. And I will be presenting a few slides, and I will be moderating the panel. Just a few information about what we do. Though we have been known a lot about some of the marketing output with webinars and white papers and such. We do provide market research. In fact, we're the proud analyst in charge of the WPA industry report on a yearly basis. We provide market sizing, forecasting, and all of the foundation to enable some consulting work around business models and partner strategy and go-to-market strategies. Some of the areas that we focus a lot, specifically on enterprise, is the conversion between Wi-Fi and cellular. Though we look at Wi-Fi from the angles of home and the ISP and carrier class Wi-Fi, when it comes to the context of the enterprise, those are some of the areas we look at that include enterprise Wi-Fi trends from industrial to hospitality. Of course, this needs to be analyzed in the context of the evolution of Open RAN and vRAN and the whole aspect of private LTE, especially given that the 6 gigahertz spectrum will have a battle for 5G NR and license to come into the Wi-Fi space, traditionally space occupied by Wi-Fi. The areas we look also, we think that are very interesting include, of course, EFC, dynamic spectrum sharing, integration of IoT and LP1, and increasingly, the new methodologies used for making BSS and OSS more agile. A lot of initiatives around opening APIs for improving performance and enabling more agility on behalf of operators is something of interest. To monetize, there's big questions as always on the table. How do you monetize 5G and how do you monetize Wi-Fi? Those are relevant for both camps. So I'll start with sharing some hotspot data here for some research we have done a couple of years ago. We updated some of the data here, but in terms of the methodology, we looked at hotspots from two different angles. Starting with verticals, we identified a number of key segments and started by looking at the number of outlets for each segment in 35 countries. Because at the end of the day, public Wi-Fi is happening in businesses, whether those are SMBs, multi-dwelling units, malls, hotels, what have you. And so the foundation for the research was starting with the number of outlets from which we applied in our model a number of assumptions around Wi-Fi penetration, around the number of hotspots for each location. For example, a hotel has different hotspots following the WBA definition of the lobby versus rooms versus other public venues. On the service provider side, we spoke to and researched some of the data provided by service providers for their public hotspots and hotspots. In this particular instance today, we'll only focus on hotspots because hotspots is an area that is going through a lot of uncertainty recently. So showing some numbers here, again, the largest part of the hotspot numbers, as you can find on Google search, is going to be represented by home spots, which are in the hundreds of millions. When it comes to public hotspots in the 35 countries, we have made an assessment of the numbers you can see here. Retail is the number one sector here because it's the most dynamic and promising vertical for wireless technologies and Wi-Fi. The whole concept of the omni-channel experience aims at creating a consistent journey for the consumer throughout their shopping experience. So this in turn requires the adoption of Wi-Fi to engage and track the shopper journey inside and around stores. So retail do value Wi-Fi, they're deploying it and they're using it to engage with their customers. Food sector, interestingly, cafes and restaurants also a very dynamic opportunity for Wi-Fi and open roaming. Ultimately, alongside with hotels, the need for amenity Wi-Fi has become, a necessity, and it is expected by guests, especially in cafes and in restaurants. And of course, retail healthcare, is also a very promising vertical. In fact, Brad will be talking today about the case study for open roaming in the healthcare sector. Some other data here coming from the ISPs. So those are operator managed hotspots. Operator managed means exactly that the venue or SMB buys Wi-Fi as a service from the operator who's responsible for deploying and managing the Wi-Fi network for the business client. There were over 13 million operator-managed public hotspots in the 35 countries surveyed. As I indicated earlier, we did not include home spots at the moment because there's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of the operators have switched off their community Wi-Fi for business reasons because the technology wasn't ready or for other monetization reasons. But we think there is a change in the market and that managed community Wi-Fi will come back stronger in the near future. Just for definition, hotspots when an operator downloads software on the home gateway to allow outside users to share the Wi-Fi. And that's all for me. So those are numbers. Again, the presentation is being recorded and the slides deck will be available. So I'd like to pass it on now to Thiago to share the WBA perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adlan. Always a pleasure to be on this type of events. In particular, we together with you and Bart, and also to have the chance to share more about open roaming from the Wireless Broadband Alliance perspective. Okay, so as Adlan said, so I'm Tiago Rodrigues, the CEO of the Wireless Broadband Alliance. I'll be talking about open roaming. I'll give a snapshot of the role of open roaming, some of market adoption, and I will finish as well with a case study that was developed by a group of the members of the Alliance. Let's start by understanding what is open roaming. So open roaming is an open standard that any company can implement open roaming on their networks or their equipment. At the same time, is a roaming federation that allows roaming between the different Wi-Fi networks. You can use the same credential and visit different Wi-Fi hotspots, and you get connected with the same credential, giving that automatic and secure and private experience on the Wi-Fi. At the same time, I like to say that it's a framework for all the companies that embrace open roaming to develop new business opportunities on the wireless technology space. And I'll be talking a little bit about some of those opportunities that at least myself and the Wireless Broadband Alliance, we believe they are relevant. A little bit of background on open roaming. So open roaming was released back in 2020 with the release one of the standard. It was focusing on the architecture framework, the legal framework, all the different assets that were required to make the federation work, and have a focus on the free Wi-Fi of settlement free type of Wi-Fi access. So I like to say that release one was the free Wi-Fi federation. Then in 2021, we released the second version of open roaming, where we have the settle case. So the paid Wi-Fi model, where we integrated the concept of QoS on the open roaming. There are different levels of QoS, and as well the integration of location identification to deliver those levels of QoS in specific Wi-Fi hotspots. And then the members of the Alliance are working very hardly on the release free, where we are bringing as well the integration and convergence of the open roaming with private 3GPP networks, and as well an IoT focus for open roaming. Today, open roaming works with any pass point equipment out there from an infrastructure point of view. There is a group of members that are already working, or they already have easy setups on their controllers and equipments for open roaming. You can see here examples of Cisco Meraki, Extreme, AirTies, Mist, and others that have that concept that I can activate open roaming in a very easy way. So making the role quite easy for the different IT teams to activate it. At the same time, it works with all AP manufacturers that supports the pass point certification from Wi-Fi Alliance. So you can see some examples that have been tested by the WBA team from Daylink, Huawei, Aruba, Galgo. So all function very well, and they are all pass point open roaming ready. At the same time, open roaming works today with all major equipment manufacturers, including iOS, Android, Windows. It works perfectly. We have been having thousands and thousands of users every day on all these platforms. Then many times I'm asked how to get the credential into the device using open roaming. And I can summarize it in 3 different ways that you can provision your device with a credential to be to be used on OpenRoaming compatible networks. And many of the members and companies that are implementing OpenRoaming, they can use one of these mechanisms or even all of them at the same time. So one way, that is the example of Samsung, you create a native credential on your phone. So you just need to go to the, in this case, because it uses the Android operating system, you need to go to the Wi-Fi advanced settings and you activate the hotspot 2.0 function, and immediately you can see an OpenRoaming credential being provisioning on your device. So that's one way, focusing on the device manufacturers to be native on the device. Other option, and I give here the example of our testing portal. So it's an online portal that you can have for one-time provisioning method. So the customer can go there, can include whatever information is required, accept the terms, and download the credential for the device. And from that moment on, that device is ready to connect to any OpenRoaming network. The third option is via one app. So you can provision OpenRoaming credential on the app. And once you install the app or you refresh the app, you'll get the device provision. And from that moment, that device, every time that enters on the coverage area of a Wi-Fi network with OpenRoaming active, will attach automatically. And this case, in fact, is the example of a Belgian chain of supermarkets called LA's. So they have implemented OpenRoaming on their supermarkets across Belgium. And once you create one account with the LA's through the app, automatically that device gets provisioning for OpenRoaming. And every time that you go to a supermarket or to any other location with OpenRoaming, you get attached to the network. Then another topic that many times people ask me, okay, but Thiago, if we have all this automatic experience, we lose the option to somehow interact with the customer. And many times people like to use the Kafka portal as a way to share more information with the customers. So with OpenRoaming, there is a way to maintain the user engagement, even having a fully automatic experience. And on our last European Congress in October 2022, we did a demo on the Amsterdam Convention Center, the RAI, where we did a demo with this technology called Kport API. That basically, if you have an OpenRoaming credential, you get attached to the Wi-Fi network, and immediately you receive a notification on your phone, on the notifications menu, that can be completely personalized, and you can have a link to redirect to the internet, to any type of page, and you can provide more information to the user or the customer in that case. And we did a test on that. And at the same time, as this is so important for many of our members, WBA, we have a dedicated project on user engagement for OpenRoaming and PassPoint. So we'll invite all of you to get involved on these discussions, because this is a very interesting evolution of the engagement with OpenRoaming. With this, we have today more than 3 million APs with OpenRoaming live across the world. Every day there are new deployments that we see coming. Even recently, the Tokyo city just released an OpenRoaming network for free Wi-Fi in their city, and many others are working today on activating OpenRoaming. Sharing with you what I believe are the main benefits for OpenRoaming. So, as I said before, provides that seamless, secure, and Wi-Fi experience. At the same time, enlarge drastically the number of devices and customers attaching to the Wi-Fi network. We have been seeing examples of multiplying by 2, multiplying by 5, multiplying by 10, sometimes even multiplying by 30, the number of devices attaching to the Wi-Fi network. Because once you activate OpenRoaming, it's completely automatic. So the user doesn't need to touch the device connects to the network, and that is a much easier and simpler experience for everyone. Another benefit is for those companies that are focusing on Wi-Fi roaming. So OpenRoaming is a roaming federation, so it makes very easy the roaming agreements, helps to save time, resources, and money, and you don't need to have all those one-on-one agreements, so you can join the federation and you get immediately access to all the members of the federation. It can help to grow revenues either by Wi-Fi offload, Wi-Fi roaming, or even by other means of indirect revenue with advertisement or other services, and enlarge as well the number of footprint of networks and partners working with you. It gives the option and the opportunity to grow your customer base, satisfaction of your customers, and on the case of loyalty programs, and helps as well to increase that loyalty benefits. And at the same time, by using a specific passpoint credential and unique ID, it solves all those matters of security, privacy, and even the micro-rotation issues that are happening on the Wi-Fi networks. What makes much more transparent and secure to use the OpenRoaming as the means to give guest access to anyone entering your venue. In terms of business opportunities, as I said, Wi-Fi offload and Wi-Fi roaming definitely is an opportunity, a business opportunity using OpenRoaming. But I see as well the opportunity to look into OpenRoaming as a managed Wi-Fi service. So that can be one more service on your portfolio of services. But then, as I said, advertisement publicity can be another revenue stream, either directly or indirectly, and even open up the opportunity for identity management services, location-based services, and even how to integrate with IoT verticals and private cellular networks. And what I have next is one example of a case study that I have a short video that shows the use of OpenRoaming in a very specific vertical that is one port and attached to transportation of goods. And I think it's very interesting because it gives that sense of convergence, how OpenRoaming can go beyond Wi-Fi technology. So I will pass now the video.
When an asset is moved through a critical infrastructure like a port, the connectivity layers are not always available maybe. So with OpenRoaming, the technology will connect the asset to every available connectivity layer and make sure it is always online and providing its critical data to, for example, an S3 layer. So we create full transparency and security for the journey of the container.
Port of Rotterdam is not the biggest port anymore, but we want to be the smartest port. And for us, the smartest port is being extremely sustainable, extremely efficient, and extremely safe. And for that, we have to work together with all kinds of innovative partners and industry leaders, such as Cisco.
By securely provisioning a profile identity to the container, it can be securely moved and transported through the digital twin.
From S3 we believe we have to look at the world from a spatial perspective to understand the world in a better way. The two most important ingredients are data, first of all. You have the sensor data, that's real time, And for example, also the information about where's the customer located, where's custom located, where's the terminal located. Beside the data, you of course need the domain intelligence, the domain expertise. What situations are normal and in what situation is the container, for example, compromised? That you know what should be the triggers. And I think that's a way that Esri can contribute in the visualization of it, that you can get the information by map, but also with the spatial analytics on it.
We provide a Container 42 with a smart lock from the inside that can only be opened via the digital way. So it has to be always online. And to be always online, we have the OpenRoaming technology. And we know at every moment what's going on with the container. So goods will not be compromised. And that allows the whole industry to also ship higher value goods because we know what's going on with them.
In the current state, with the supply chain interruptions, sometimes these delivery times are uncertain. And with this new solution, OpenRoaming, we think that these end-to-end lead times can be more transparent, more under control. So this solution is a perfect solution and adds tremendous value to what we do for Cisco.
OpenRoaming, Wi-Fi, private 5G, no matter what it is, as I mentioned earlier on, the technology has come on so much. And having that innovation to be able to go and provide those solutions with a provider such as Cisco is a massive, massive benefit to anyone looking to address those problems.
The OpenRoaming technology helps us to build trusted and transparent trade lanes all around the globe.
Yeah, so hope you enjoy case study of Port of Rotterdam, and feel free to reach out if you have any other thoughts, or if you'd like to know more about the OpenRoaming. You can always contact me by email or via LinkedIn. And with this, I just want to thank you for your time, and back to you, Adlan.
Thank you, Thiago. Great video. I mean, I think ports is really the last location where I could imagine Wi-Fi being used traditionally. So this is definitely disruptive. So last but not least, our next speaker is Bart Brinkman, the father of Open Wi-Fi, who's on vacation right now, but we had to put him out, and we thank you for taking the time today, Bart. Talk about Open Wi-Fi. Sorry, OpenRoaming.
Hello. Hey, thank you, Adlan, and thank you very much, Thiago, for the wonderful introduction to OpenRoaming. My name is Bart Brinkman. I'm a distinguished engineer at Cisco in the wireless team, and my goal today is to talk a little bit more about how it actually works, how OpenRoaming works. So to take you through that journey. So ultimately, our goal here, as far as OpenRoaming is concerned, is to seamlessly connect both people and things to the best available network, be it Wi-Fi or a cellular network like 5G. Now, in the cellular world, that problem has been, pretty much solved. If you step off an airplane somewhere in a different country and you turn your phone on, it will automatically connect to the best available network. Not so much on Wi-Fi. On Wi-Fi, you're basically looking for the right SSID to connect to and the credentials for that SSID. And that's exactly what OpenRoaming solves. It basically enables that onboarding to be frictionless. So you could basically hand over seamlessly from a cellular network, 4G or a 5G network, into a private Wi-Fi network. And of course, that interworking has to be policy based. So ultimately, that the path has to be allowed, that access network selection has to be allowed both by the access network and the provider of the identity of that device. So if you think about it, the way we solved cellular roaming with bilateral agreements between operators or through roaming hubs. You really can't solve the Wi-Fi roaming problem in the same way, because in the cellular world, you're basically dealing with hundreds of parties, but with Wi-Fi, you're basically dealing with millions of parties. So we couldn't really, rely on bilateral agreements, on roaming hubs. So what we did is we looked further and we looked at an identity federation. The identity federation can be comprised of many access provider types. So, for example, enterprises, healthcare providers, retail, and hospitality. But also, and this is kind of new to OpenRoaming, you can have many identity types. So it's not only mobile network operators or cable operators, but also web identities, cloud identities. Tiago just mentioned Samsung, kind of a device identity, but those could be enterprise identities and loyalty programs, for example. Now, for us to basically enable roaming between these millions of parties, our identity federation needs to be comprised of two things. First of all, a legal framework, and second of all, kind of a technical solution. So the legal framework basically consists out of terms and conditions for access providers, for identity providers, and also end user terms and conditions. So with that legal framework, we know how each of the parties, the networks, the identity providers, and the users of the federation are meant to behave when they consume or deliver such a service. Okay, so that's aspect number one. And that legal framework was developed under the WBA by all of its members. So, Cisco and many of the parties that you saw on the slide that Tiago just showed. The second thing we need is basically an identity federation that can help in discover who an identity provider for a user is, apply policy, both for access providers and identity providers, to basically decide whether or not a roaming event will happen. And obviously that, roaming event has to happen securely and while respecting the privacy of the end user. And all of that basically is comprised in the OpenRoaming standard and the OpenRoaming framework. So if we kind of double click and we look at which identities are available, well, we kind of went through the list before, but if you look at the credential types, obviously there's the service provider SIM card, but it could also, for example, be your cable identity. Enterprise certificates, so enterprises can be identity providers. Credentials can be embedded into a device, for example, Samsung with Samsung ID, Google with Google ID on Android. I have OpenRoaming embedded into their devices with their identity. And basically any cloud identity provider can also become an identity provider on OpenRoaming, and that can be embedded in their web application or in an application that sits on to the device. And ultimately also what we see more and more is that loyalty providers are becoming identity providers. So we're thinking about the loyalty programs in retail and hospitality, for example, one of which Tiago just gave you an example of, for example, the retailer or the grocery store in Belgium. Now, let's take a look at kind of the major tenets of OpenRoaming and how it works. So basically, OpenRoaming both is a standard, is an innovative standard, but also, and that's very much due to the WBA, is really built on industry collaboration. So if we look at the 4 innovations that enabled OpenRoaming, number one really, obviously is the identity federation. That's both an architecture and a legal framework. And the interesting thing about the federation is that it can really cater to different business models. So it can cater to a model in which, everything is open and everybody's allowed, but it can also enable deep partnerships. The second innovation that comes with the federation is that it is able to dynamically discover peers and services that allow an access network to directly connect to an identity provider. So there's no need for a third-party intermediate. The access network can discover who the identity provider is and can securely connect to it. And then obviously what's also important is policy, because if you want inside that single legal framework to cater to different business models, you need to be able to enact policy both on the access network side and the identity provider side. And last but not least, there's also the ability to develop or to offer additional value on top of the federation by means of proxy services. Those can be various. They could connect cloud identities or web identities. They can provide settlement for OpenRoaming paid and various other value-added services. And then last but not least, we also have to look at industry collaboration here. And we talked a lot about access networks and identity providers, but the device ecosystem is also very important here. And with the collaboration and support of the device ecosystem, we were able to build a much better end user experience. And obviously what's also important is that this is an actual standard. So anybody can benefit. So anybody on the network side, on the identity provider side, and the end user side. Now, if we double click on how it works. So the first step here is that you sign up to the federation. So you become a member. So access networks can become a member, identity provider can become a member. And this is very similar to getting a certificate for a website. So you basically provide some validation experience to an agent, and that agent will validate that you say who you are, and you own the assets that you claim that you own, and will provide a certificate to prove that. Once you have that certificate, you can use that to identify yourself on the federation. In Cisco's example, that is kind of built into the Cisco stack. So when you enable OpenRoaming, this kind of happens automatically in the background. Now that everybody can identify everybody, what identity providers also do is that they configure their DNS records so they become discoverable to access networks. That's very important because when an end user that has an OpenRoaming credential on its device comes into the coverage of an access network, the access network will chirp and say, OpenRoaming is supported here. This is a hotspot 2.0 feature. The device will say, okay, tell me more. Who do you accept? The access network will respond with the identity providers it accepts. And then the access network will, the end user of the device will present a credential, an anonymized credential, and the identity provider will be discovered from that credential through DNS. So that's why it's important to configure DNS, because now the access network knows who to talk to. The next thing that happens is there's a TLS setup with those certificates that were provided when you signed it, when you signed up to the federation. So now the access network and the identity provider, they can authenticate each other, right? And this is also the time when policy comes into play. So now the access network and the IDP, they can decide whether or not they want this roaming event to happen. They can decide, do I want to work with the other party? Once that happens, a secure tunnel gets set up, and then authentication and accounting goes over that secure tunnel, and the user is able to access that Wi-Fi network. So that's in a nutshell how it works. Now, the OpenRoaming, as Thiago explained, was first kind of released as a standard in 2020. So that's it's close to 3 years ago now, right? Cisco was one of the first to implement OpenRoaming. And this is a view of an actual healthcare user that has been running OpenRoaming for about 12 months. But it's a graph that starts the 1st of June of 2021 until the 1st of June of 2022. So it's actually almost 2 years that they're running this. So this healthcare customer, this was in the pandemic, so they were still dealing with an overload in patients. And what was happening in this hospital is that there was poor indoor coverage in many areas. Obviously installing a digital antenna system to solve this would be very expensive and it would take a long time. And at the same time, also what was happening is that, obviously since people are in the hospital, they're waiting, they're bored, they want to have internet access to, for entertainment purposes. And this was becoming a little bit of a burden on the staff, right? Because they had to support getting those people online. So in order to solve the indoor coverage problem plus the kind of support, staff support burden problem, what they did is they turned on OpenRoaming. They did this in a matter of hours, so it's very, very quick to turn up the service. And they turned it on first on one campus. They were very happy with it, and then turned it onto a second campus. So what happened here? Obviously, because they have a good Wi-Fi network, it solved their indoor coverage problems, and really took the burden off the staff, so that the staff could really focus on doing their job, on the clinical aspect of their job, rather than the IT support aspect of their job. And as you see, running more than a year, they've connected more than or made more than 3.1 million connections, many of which were recurring, for a total of 234,000 visitors. And obviously 1.5 petabytes of traffic will probably include a lot of video. Now, as far as Cisco is concerned, we support the Hotspot 2.0 standard, the OpenRoaming Identity Federation built on top of that, the SLA measurement and reporting functions in OpenRoaming Phase 2, as well as an SDK that allows our customers to become identity providers themselves and participate in the ecosystem. So all of that is fully packaged into our stack, be it Cisco Meraki or Cisco Catalyst, in a platform called Cisco Spaces. And we deliver a number of end user experience ranging from seamless and secure guest onboarding to enhanced carrier indoor coverage, to more sophisticated experiences that allow you to acquire loyal customers using the solution. So the stack allows you to get going in minutes, and you can get OpenRoaming up and running on your Cisco network very, very easily with the integrated functionality. And that's it for me. So Adlan, I'd like to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Bart. This is fascinating. Thanks for explaining us how the magic works. Let's dive into some questions. I mean, we have one that's pretty high level here. Feel free to answer, Bart. What's the difference? It could be, sometimes it can be confusing, the difference between Passpoint, Hotspot 2.0, and OpenRoaming, right? So I'll let you address that.
Okay, that's a very good question, actually. So actually, when we first developed OpenRoaming, we kind of found in Passpoint a very interesting technology, because what Passpoint does, it really solves the problem of how do a device and a network communicate, kind of pre-association, around what identities are accepted somewhere, and how can I automatically connect to this network. What Passpoint didn't solve is the back end of this, is how does an access provider then connect to that identity provider. So with Passpoint, you still had the problem of you need to either be an identity provider, or you need to have a bilateral agreement with that identity provider. Mm-hmm. So the OpenRoaming Identity Federation on top of Passpoint solved the part of how do I kind of find and talk to that IDP, and how do I kind of scale Passpoint. So So OpenRoaming was really developed to scale Passpoint.
Yeah, makes sense. We have a lot of questions coming in and appreciate that. Maybe one for you, Thiago. How do you think the payments from new independent deployments from mobile carriers to proceed over time? Not sure I understand the question. Do you?
Yeah, I can give,
Okay.
not sure if I can answer that question, if I understood it correctly, but one good example is Google Orion Wi-Fi. So Orion Wi-Fi is one application of OpenRoaming by Google for paid access. So they focus on the OpenRoaming paid service, and they do offload mainly in US for different service providers that somehow they want to add extra coverage or extra capacity in some locations. And by doing that, they are attracting network providers, so can be a retail shop or any other venue, to be part of that Google Orion, and they will somehow do some revenue share with the owner of the network. So that's somehow the model that Google Orion is implementing. I don't know if this was exactly the answer to the question, but is one application of OpenRoaming with shuttle services for mobile carriers.
We can certainly follow up offline with the person that made that question. We have another question that's probably more for Bart here, which is more technical. You know, many enterprises have OSU requirements for onboarding users. How does OpenRoaming overlap with the Passpoint OSU functionality to create an effective solution?
All right, so OSU is a WFA Hotspot 2.0 standard that allows you to onboard a Passpoint or a device with a Passpoint profile from a portal experience. So it's basically one of the many ways you can get a Passpoint profile onto a device. Now, since OpenRoaming supports Passpoint profiles, OSU could be used to get an OpenRoaming identity onto a device as well. So it doesn't overlap, rather than they are complementary, right? So if you think about the ways you have to get a device provisioned, either service provider carrier bundle from an app, already embedded, downloaded from a web portal or OSU, right? All of those are supported both by a generic Passpoint network as well as an OpenRoaming enabled network.
Okay, thank you. I hope that helps.
And Arlan and Bart, if I can just add one thing, I even believe that makes sense for an enterprise to deploy several of those mechanisms. So I think not every single customer may use an app, or not every single customer will use a OSU server. So I think it's a good approach to have multiple options to give credentials to the customers.
Thank you. There's another one here specific to Cisco. So back to you, Bart. What role can managed service providers have in providing OpenRoaming service with Cisco AP?
Yeah, so I think a very big role ultimately, because ultimately, I mean, it kind of depends on, if you're looking at the managed service providers from a kind of mobile carrier perspective, the role there is, okay, this could really extend their network indoor, right? So in places where potentially kind of a cellular deployment is cost prohibitive, they can use this to extend their coverage indoor. Now, if it's like kind of a regular enterprise managed service provider, obviously where it can be beneficial for them is it can basically extend their portfolio of services that they could offer into enterprises. And then very specifically, if we look at public venues like retail, hospitality, for example, they can use things like the SDK that Cisco is fielding for those venues to become IDPs themselves, right? And offer further services on top of OpenRoaming.
Okay. Thank you. Next question is for you, Thiago. How many Wi-Fi enabled end device and access points are OpenRoaming certified today? I think you had the slide about the access point providers are.
Yeah, I think we can divide it this question into at two levels. So one level is how many APs today they have activated OpenRoaming or OpenRoaming is live. The number is more than 3 million, 3 million APs. So the other side of this question, I believe, is to say that OpenRoaming will work in any AP that is passpoint capable and any device that is passpoint capable, because OpenRoaming works on top of passpoint. As Bart said, we extend the capabilities of passpoint with the roaming federation, with the easy or standardized configuration of the network. So if any AP, any device is passpoint capable, will work for OpenRoaming.
Okay, so it's more a question for the Wi-Fi Alliance to know, how many passpoint enabled devices, make some models.
Adlan, maybe I can add something to that. I think although every Wi-Fi AP pretty much out there will support passpoint, right? I think from what we do from a Cisco perspective, and I think from a WBA perspective as well, OpenRoaming does have a minimum SLA because we want to give people that roam onto OpenRoaming a good experience. So, and what we will do at Cisco, we will typically not deploy OpenRoaming on a network that is not kind of Wi-Fi 5 enabled. That's kind of our lower bound. It's not that it's specifically the OpenRoaming kind of minimum SLA, right? That's defined differently. It's kind of defined as kind of a throughput that the device is meant to get. But from an experience perspective, we kind of, that's where Cisco kind of draws the line.
Okay, makes sense. Thiago, you mentioned 3 million OpenRoaming hotspots or APs. Can you give us some color about which regions, which verticals, which ISPs are the most dynamic?
Yeah, I can give some color, not a lot, but I can give some color. So definitely North America, Europe are in front in terms of deployments. We see some as well in Asia Pacific region, but not at the same level as US and Europe, and then Africa and South America. In terms of verticals, what I can share is the majority or the large majority of deployments are based on free Wi-Fi. So Bart's talked about healthcare. I talked about retail. We saw the example of a port. We have as well some traction on municipalities. So I mentioned Tokyo, but other municipalities like Dublin and Barcelona have been working on that. So this is some examples that I can share today.
Okay. Okay, great. We have another question now specific to Cisco. It says, with Cisco Meraki, is DNA Spaces required to deploy OpenRoaming service?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so it's a full cloud solution of Meraki and Spaces, correct? Yeah.
Okay, well, that was straight. Maybe to finish off, a question to both of you. Maybe a couple of questions. One would be, what are the remaining obstacles to OpenRoaming adoption? Maybe you can take this first, Thiago.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the major barriers is somehow promote more this technology. So at least from the majority of the cases that I got involved on the deployments, everyone really gets amazed with the automatic experience that we get with OpenRoaming. So we enter just in one location and the device will attach automatically. So I don't need to do anything. I don't even need to take out the device from my pocket. He's going to attach to the network. And that is definitely a unique experience that is missing on Wi-Fi. So for me, more promotion of the technology is a gap. And if I want to give some more technical inputs, I think when I mentioned user engagement, I think that's another key element for some verticals like the retail or hospitality. There are verticals that by tradition, they like to have some level of engagement with the customer. And I think that's an area that WBA we have been working a lot and will continue to work on that front to address that gap.
Yeah. What about you, Bart? Do you see?
Well, yeah, I think OpenRoaming it's a federation. Okay, so which basically means that the more members, the more useful, the federation becomes. So typically something like this kind of, it's kind of like a flywheel, right? It gets started slow and it goes faster and faster and faster until it reaches a critical mass. And then, when everybody, wants to join. So what I would say is, get on the bus, right? Because, it's going to start moving faster and faster and faster. And, the sooner you get on, the more experience you get with it. So I would say, try it out and, provide feedback to us, to the WBA. And yeah, so we can get that flywheel going and start moving faster and faster.
Yeah, that's great. We're getting a lot of questions. Probably won't have time to address all of them because we want to finish at top of the hour. Maybe a last one here, which is a good segue from what you just spoke about. Does OpenRoaming allow for selective roaming with specific IDPs, or is it an all-in system where everyone has to roam with everywhere and everyone?
Yeah, I can answer quickly. So yes, the standards allows for selective roaming, and yeah, specific verticals will have that need, and it's possible.
And then the follow-up question on that, and if it's possible, would that need to be set up on the radios or the controller?
Yeah, so it's a poll. It depends. It depends who you are. If you're
Exactly.
an access network, if you're an access network on an IDP. So I think the short answer is it would be mostly on the radius on both sides, but you can also limit what you advertise on the controller.
Correct,
okay.
But and depends a lot as well on the size of the network. So are we talking about one controller or multiple controllers in multiple locations?
Okay. Well, we have had a lot of questions, so I'll share some of the questions we haven't had time to answer with you guys offline. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for this incredibly interesting conversation. And there were a lot of questions. Seems the level of interest is there, definitely. This is a new technology. New in terms of adoption. And so I think, the level of interest indicates that people want to learn more about it. So I want to thank also the audience for participating, for their questions. And this webinar has been recorded and will be available for replay along with the slide deck in the next 24 hours. And that ends the webinar today, the first of a series of webinars on conversions. Thank you again, everyone, and I'll start the recording. Thank you.
Yeah.